Welcome to Manhwa Recaps, spoilers ahead, watch out, and take care. Huge shout out, and a special thanks to my Patreon and channel members. The series starts with a kid saying that he wants to be a wizard, and he and another girl are play fighting. She's pretending to be a monster that eats wizards, so he raises his stick, and bonks her in the head, and she starts to yell asking why he hit her for real. He says that monsters are supposed to lose to wizards, and an old man watches them playing, saying that they sure are energetic in the morning. His name is Grandpa Rabus. The boy asks what he needs to do to become a wizard, and Rabus says that he can't just become one when he wants to. Wizards are the apex of humanity, and they are the ones who rule over humans from the highest hierarchies. There are nobles and knights who inherited the ability to use mysterious powers from their ancestors, so unfortunately they won't become wizards. Another man asks Rabus how he can say something like that to the children. But regardless, he wants to know if the rumors are true. Rabus asks what he's talking about, and the dude says that he heard a monster appeared. Rabus says that it is. They say that Rob came across it at the entrance last night, and its whole body was covered in a pitch black shadow, and it was a leopard the size of a house. But Rabus tells him not to worry about it, as the village chief went to the city to request for a wizard. He'll definitely bring one back, and the monster will be subjugated. The little girl's mother from earlier says that's a relief, asking her daughter if she heard that right, and for the time being she can't go into the forest. Rabus says that they should all be careful, because without a wizard killing a monster is close to impossible. The dude from earlier asks if all the villagers know, and Rabus says of course. The dude asks if that includes him as well, and Rabus wonders who he's talking about until the man says he's talking about the shepherd on Hisaril Hill. As we see him with some sheep, we learn that his name is Turan. He's just chilling laying out in the grass, saying how boring it is. It's the same scenery every single day over and over, and at this rate he's going to forget how to talk. Rabus then calls him pathetic, saying the sun hasn't even started to set yet, he's already slacking off. Turan tells him that he's blocking the sunlight, and to move. Rabus says he has no manners, and asks if he's still holding on to that incident from back then. Turan asks if he's talking about when his mother died, and he tried to quietly turn the sheep into shared property. Rabus clears his throat. Turan says that if that is what he means, then yes. He's not generous enough to share his mother's inheritance, and they're not close enough to be asking how each other is doing. So if he came here, he needs to say what he wants, and get lost. Rabus gets annoyed, and raises his voice. Turan glares at him, asking what he wants. Rabus tells him that a monster has appeared, and Turan asks about it. Rabus says it's apparently as big as a house, and then tells him the same thing about how Rob found it. Turan tells him that's actually a serious problem. Rabus can tell that he's not even scared, even though he's the most likely target around here. He doesn't know what kind of guts he's got, but the village chief went to the city to request a wizard, so he should be careful. He came because he was worried about him. Turan says that he's not very honest, and he just came because he was worried about the sheep, and not him. Rabus goes to raise his voice again, and Turan says that if he's done talking to get lost, as his breath fucking reeks. The old man walks away. Turan says that monsters are beasts that wield mysterious power and magic. If humans have wizards, then beasts have monsters. But he's glad that a wizard is finally coming to their backwater village, because it means he gets to see one in person. But if it's a rural village chief calling them, there's a good chance they won't be anything special even if they are a wizard, but still he wants to see one, and see how strong they truly are. His nose starts to catch a whiff of something, and he recognizes the smell as it's none other than blood. He heads down into the forest, and follows the scent. He says that he's sure it's this way. As he gets closer, he looks down, seeing Rabus ripped into literal chunks on the floor. He says he told him to be careful, yet he went ahead first. But he didn't think the source of the blood smell would be him. This isn't an ordinary wound a wild animal can make, and he has to be careful. He then hears something approaching him, and when he looks up he sees a giant hand as the monster creeps closer. Turan stares directly at it. The rumors are true, there really is a monster here. We hear the kid that was playing the wizard earlier asking his dad how strong a monster is, and if it's true adults can't beat it. His dad says that they're insanely strong. If ordinary adults like him rush it, they won't even be able to collect his bones. The kid asks if they can't beat it, what's going to happen to their village. He says not to worry, the village chief will bring a wizard, and he will subjugate the monster. The boy asks if the wizard will lose to the monster. His dad says of course not. They are great beings born with the power of magic. They will kill the monster with a single word. As the monster flies in at Turan, he opens his mouth telling it to die. Just this word alone causes the monster to backpedal, creating distance between the two of them. It starts to snarl at him as he releases an aura. He wonders if it's not working. The monster then leaps at him, and he says to stop. Once more it distances itself from him. He says he knew killing it wouldn't work, but it can't even be stopped. It comes in for an attack, this time straight towards where he is standing, but only hits the ground, then turns, seeing Turon off on his side. Turon says if that's the case. As he reaches into his coat he pulls out a rock, saying that a shepherd should do what a shepherd does best. The monster readies another attack. He fortifies the stone by telling it to harden, and puts it in his sling. His eyes start to glow golden, and he tells it to become faster as he swirls it. As the monster charges in, he takes a step forward, telling it to pierce through. When he does, it sounds like it breaks the sound barrier multiple times. It's like some David versus Goliath shit as he throws the rock straight towards the monster, piercing through its skull. But we see it actually go all the way through its body. At least that's what it looks like. As the blood's flying, we see it only grazed it. The monster then dashes off the ground, shattering it beneath it, reaching straight towards Turon. He says that it's actually aiming for the head. The rock in the air stops. It begins to twirl, and homes straight towards the back of the thing's skull, blowing it smooth off. As it eventually comes to a stop, Turon says this is his first time using it on a monster, and maybe he should toss it into some valley or something. But those village bastards sure put him to work. He explains that he actually is a wizard. He realized its special abilities 8 years ago when he was 10. As he tried to show his mother, making multiple things float, she came in, dropping her can onto the floor. He told her that he can even make fire, and wind. The memories of this day are still clear in his mind as she yells, telling him to stop it. It was the first, and last time his mother got mad at him. He asks what's wrong, and she says he needs to come, and have a chat with her. She asks him if he wants to live with her for a long time, and he says he does. She then makes him promise her that he won't use this power from now on, and that he will never use it in front of other people. He asks why, and she says that he needs to remember the story about the noble, and the knight. He says he does. He recites it, telling her they call the people who wield this special power wizards, whether they are nobles, or knights, but nobles, and knights are inherently different. Nobles are descendants of the divine people, the Freyans, who descended to save the old humans. Knights are descendants of those nobles whose blood has been mixed with humans. She tells him that's correct, and he remembers, and that is why they differentiate between nobles, and knights even amongst wizards. She will tell him why he can't use this power, as he inherited the power of his father, a knight. But there are many evil nobles outside of this town, and the nobles who treat knights as their slaves are amongst them. So he needs to remember that nobody can know that he is a wizard, and surely he can promise her that. 8 years have passed since then, and he has continued to uphold his promise with his mother. That promise will not be broken, as he has no desire to reveal himself as a wizard, or to descend the mountain. There are some people yelling, telling him to get the hell out of here. When he exits he sees a bunch of the villagers, and he yawns, asking if they are really blaming him for Rabus's death. They say they are, calling him shameless. He hurt that old man, and threw him to be eaten by monsters. Turon waits for a second, saying that he sees why they want to frame him as the oldest man in the village who died alone, instead of the young men who were too scared to fight the monster, and he can see why they think this is the best way out of that. As it's the easiest way for them to shift blame from themselves to him. The dude rears back his fist, and comes in with a punch, but Turon dodges underneath, and says that magic sure is convenient as he headbutts the dude in the face. He says if he strongly wishes for something it happens at the cost of mana. One of them starts running at him, and he whispers to fall over as the dude trips. Turon says he doesn't need to start a fire, he just needs to use it little by little to the point that it's not obvious. As he grabs onto one of the dude's arms he pushes it up into his head, cracking his stick over his skull. He says he just needs to punish them enough they don't die. He plans to dominate them so one-sidedly, and like that for a whole 8 years he has hidden the fact that he is a wizard through fighting like this. He says they should have used that strength for Rabus's funeral, and he asks the women if they're here to fight too. They say no, they're here to actually see him, and he just tells them to take the idiots down with them, and heads back inside. He starts to realize that they're going to use this excuse to rip him off when he goes to trade in the town, and it's going to be in chaos for a while, but he can beat them up until he gets a fair deal. He gave them a proper whooping, so they shouldn't be back for a while. But as soon as he says this there's knocking on the door, and he says they must be insane. The knocking continues, and when he opens the door yelling, asking who it is, a man is staring down at him. Turon asks who he is, and he says that he thought he could ask for a favor in his travels, but he must have caught him at an inopportune moment. Turan is surprised to see a traveler, and not the villagers, and tells him that he's sorry, since some uninvited guests came a minute ago. Turan's mother taught him manners, but he doesn't know if that was proper enough. He's never talked nicely to anyone in this town, so he feels awkward, but for a traveler to have a sword in this town he might be better off to find an inn. But the dude's stomach starts rumbling though, and Turan sighs, telling him to come on inside. When he does, Turan prepares him a lot of food, and he says that he's not well off, so they don't have that much. The dude says that this is a feast though, but then he surprises him, as he's surely never met anyone from outside this town. Turan says that's right, he was born and raised on this hill, and has lived as a shepherd all this time. It's also rare for this town to get tourists to begin with. The man stares at him watching him drink, and says it's interesting. For someone who grew up as a shepherd, he's quite well versed in manners, and his parents must have taught him well. Turan says that he learned from his mother, but she died a few years ago to an illness. The man says that she raised a proud son like him, so he's sure she's residing among the gods in the palace in the heavens. He says that he wants to thank him once more. Turan says he just lives the way his mother taught him, but wonders what he's doing all the way in this town. He says he was asked a favor. Turan asks what for, and the man says they were looking for someone to take care of a monster, and he's actually a wizard. Turan says that he must be the wizard their village elder talked about. The dude says that's correct, but also he has a question. He senses a monster in this area, but he doesn't see one. What's even weirder is that he knows about the village elder and the monster, yet he seems calm and is not running away. If the monster went for a human, it would be him, so why isn't he scared? He seems awfully brave for a shepherd who's never left this town, and he asks him who exactly he is. We get a flashback to Turan asking his mom why he can't tell anyone he's a wizard, and she says it's because of the bad nobles. If nobles are shepherds like them, then knights are the dogs that nobles keep. They might treat him with love like family, but they can sacrifice and sell him off if necessary, and she doesn't want him to live that kind of life. So surely he wants to keep living with his mother, and if he does, he needs to remember this. Nobody can know that he's a wizard, especially other wizards. If they find out, they will separate them and turn him into their shepherd dog to be discarded at any moment. She tells him that if he really wants to avoid being found out as a wizard, there might be a time where he'll have to kill people to keep that secret. Turan says that this must be what it's come to, and the man asks if he can't answer that. He stares at him for a second, and then says that if he makes a face like that, it just makes his joke awkward as he nervously laughs. Turan says didn't know that was a joke, then tells him that he's sorry, he doesn't have a good sense of humor. The man says that's not it, he's the one who should apologize, as he thinks he flustered him. Turan says it's his first time hearing a wizard joke, so it just caught him off guard. The man says his reaction was so entertaining that he took the teasing too far. Come to think of it, they haven't introduced themselves properly yet, and it's nice to meet him. We finally learn that the old man's name is Kaorn. Turan says that he should have introduced himself too, and he does so, telling him he's a shepherd. He tells him he's 18 years old this year, and Kaorn says he's going to be 75. Turan says that he looks good as fuck for 75, as he doesn't look old. Kaorn explains that wizards age more slowly than ordinary people, and live much longer lives. Turan asks how he ended up becoming a wanderer. The man says after serving the Arabian family for 60 years he left. In his later years he wanted to roam from place to place without settling down. Turan says that's pretty romantic, and they continue yapping. Turan says sharing a harmless conversation with a good person like this is something that he never realized that he would find so enjoyable. They continue chatting until the sun starts to rise. Kaorn says he didn't realize how much time he was spending. He hands him an Arabian silver, saying that it's the purest among silver coins, so it should be worth more than the cost of the meal. Turan says he'll accept it gratefully, and he hopes his hunt goes smoothly. Kaorn tells him to stop acting like they won't see each other again, as he might come to get some more food before he heads out. Later in the day, as it's time for the sheep to graze in the field, Turan walks over, and tells them all to gather. They look at him before walking towards him, and he says it's the first time he's met another wizard. More than that, how long has it been since he had a conversation that felt this comfortable? The ease and humor that naturally seeped into his way of speaking was more than any adult he's ever met in his life. He was a really good person, as he came back with a wolf too. Turan says he always thought knights were just emotionless hunting dogs used by nobles, but he doesn't really know how to tell him that there are no monsters here anymore. As Kaorn walks around he says this is strange. There are traces of a battle, but he can't feel a monster's presence. He looks up, seeing the rock from Turon sling in a tree, and wonders if the monster was already killed, but who in the world would have done that? He says maybe if the village chief left it to another wizard besides him? But either way it's a relief, because someone killed the monster, and made things safe, that's all that matters. He then senses something, and turns around, and when he does so we see the monster from last time walking towards him with its face ripped apart. It releases a blood-curdling howl. Cowan says this is a monster's wraith, but who would do something like this? The monster goes to attack him, and he leaps backwards. He says that if you don't absorb, or disperse the mana from a dead monster's corpse it turns into a wraith like this. A wizard who hunts monsters would know this fact. As he leaps up high into the air he says the one who killed this monster was definitely a wizard, so why did they leave it to become a wraith? Maybe they didn't know that it becomes one if you don't absorb the mana. But a novice knight who doesn't even know something that basic could not have killed a monster like this in the first place. He wonders if they had some other intention, but either way he needs to destroy it. As he starts to draw back a bow made of sheer lightning he launches the arrow forward, but the magic just disperses as soon as it comes into contact with the monster. Cowan asks if that means the monster's mana is way more than his, and then he watches it disappear in an instant into the floor. He says that it might be trying to counter magic with magic, and wonders where it could have gone. We see it starting to appear from his shadow, and looming over top. It swings down, striking against his arm. We see blood flying. He says that this is not a level a mere knight can contend with. At the very least you need to be a lower ranked noble to have a chance. As it sends him flying backwards he says that he didn't think he'd run into a monster wraith of this caliber in some remote village, and you really never know what life will throw at you. The monster continues to change its shape into a more grotesque form, and he says this is as far as he goes. But he's not going to die obediently, and even if he does die he'll take this monster with him. He plans to concentrate all the mana into his hand, because if he stabs it directly the moment it lunges at him he might have a chance. The beast rears back its fist, but so does Cairn as they begin charging directly at one another. We see something bright off in the forest as it flies in. It blows a giant hole through the monster. Cairn stares at it, baffled, as the monster falls back down onto the floor. Turon asks if he's alright. Cairn says that a shepherd's joke is pretty crazy too, but he's just surprised to see him, and he didn't know that he was a wizard. Then asks why he didn't tell him. Turon thinks about it, and then Cairn says he would rather change the question. He asks why he helped him just now, as he could have just walked away. Turon says that it's simple. He recalls the other night when Cairn brought him a dead wolf. He asked why he went so far. Cairn wonders what he was talking about. Turon says that he doesn't know what the village chief promised him, but with his skill he feels like he could earn a lot more money, more comfortably by doing other things. Cairn says they're pitiful people. Turon asks how, and Cairn says living out here on the frontier trembling in fear without even basic protection. Turon says that's not his fault though, and Cairn says by nature a wizard is someone who inherited the power of a god. If so, then they should live with the pride of protecting powerless commoners. But not every wizard thinks the way he does. Everyone has their own thoughts, and their own way of living. Turon smiles, and tells him exactly that. The monster then raises up, going for another attack. Cairn tells him to listen carefully. It's not a level they can handle, and it's a monster you can't fight unless you're at least a noble. So he should go, and tell the village chief this immediately, then help them evacuate, as he'll hold it off here. As the monster now has a giant green eye staring at them, Cairn says that he talked big, but he doesn't know if he can last long. Turon tells him that it's fine. As if that attack landed just now he thinks it'll be okay. Cairn asks what he's talking about, and if maybe that wasn't his full strength. He says that he didn't think a young knight hiding on the mountains could hunt a wraith that even nobles would have to deal with. He realizes what he's seeing right now isn't just some small connection he happened to make in a rural village, nor is it the reckless bravado of a young knight who ran from nobles. As the scene before his eyes was imprinted in his memory, this was the beginning of a wizard who will turn the world upside down. Turon says that he was actually curious about what his limits truly are. Cairn says he won't allow him to do it. No matter how outstanding his talent is, this thing is a tough opponent, so they need to join forces. He goes to strike at Cairn, but an attack sends it flying backwards. Cairn realizes he'd only get in the way, as he couldn't even react to that last attack. At this moment he's not of any help. What he needs to do is make Turon's talent bloom, as Turon is standing still unleashing attack after attack on the beast. Turon though realizes that it's not as good as it looks, because his attacks aren't working. As the monster closes the gap he has to dodge the attack. Kaorn says you can't kill a wraith with physical attacks. Turon asks how he's meant to kill it then, and Kaorn says with fire or lightning. Turon's eyes start to change color. As fire appears it bounces off the monster, and he says that it's not working. Kaorn tells him that it's not the point. To apply a wizard's power to another living being, establishing proper causality is a basic requirement. He can't believe that the kid doesn't even have the most basic common sense of a wizard. He realizes now that he was the one who killed the monster, and let it become a wraith. That means he's never absorbed mana in his life. He tells Turon to not light a fire, he needs to make it, then shoot it. But he's more surprised by how strong he is. Turon catches his balance, and starts to imbue the fire in his hand. Kaorn explains that if you're a wizard making fire isn't difficult, but controlling it requires separate training. Of course, Turon does it instantly, as he creates a ring of fire. He stomps forward before throwing it. As it hurls through the air it explodes on impact, and the monster begins screaming as it burns alive. Kaorn tells him to keep his mind focused. He needs to keep pouring mana into it so the fire does not go out. He has to burn everything about the wraith away. Turon continues imbuing his mana into it. His eyes are now a rainbow color. The flames grow more violent, and Kaorn says they won. That was an absurdly strong wraith. You need to at least be noble class to fight it, yet he took it down. Turon asks if it's finally over now, but Kaorn can't believe that a shepherd from the mountains did this. He says that if he doesn't want to meet another wraith, then to absorb the mana first. Turon asks how, and Kaorn says he should imagine himself draining something into him. Turon says okay, and puts his hand there, and focuses, as a green aura starts to emanate from the monster, and flies into his hand. Even changing his eye color a bit, as it starts to circulate throughout his entire body. He starts to shiver, and Kaorn says he's going to feel some sort of pleasure. He can't believe it even after seeing it with his own eyes, asking if this is really his first time absorbing mana. Turon says it is. Kaorn says after one's first awakening, mana grows slowly with age. The best way to grow is to kill monsters or wizards, and absorb their mana. But this was his first time doing it, yet he's already able to handle magic at that level, meaning his innate potential is on a different league. Which means this young man must be a noble. Kaorn apologizes for being rude to him, asking which house he belongs to. Turon then tells him it's not like that, as he needs to wipe his blood off first. Back inside his house we see him in a sling, and Kaorn once more says he's sorry for the rudeness. For him to make someone so esteemed as himself do something like this he can only apologize. Turon says he's already told him he's not someone esteemed, he's just a shepherd who doesn't even know who his father is, so to stop that. Kaorn says okay, but wonders why a powerful wizard like him is a shepherd. He doesn't mean to belittle him, it just doesn't seem like it suits him. Turon says it was his mother's request. She told him to do this, right up until the moment she died. Kaorn asks him to explain more, and Turon explains below the mountains there are nobles. If it's revealed that you're a wizard, you'll only be used by them, then thrown away. Kaorn says that his mother was wise. Turon says he's surprised, since he thought he'd call it overprotective parenting. Kaorn tells him that his mother wasn't entirely wrong. Wizards have great power, and great power inevitably brings conflict. Just 20-something odd years ago there was a major war between noble houses. It was a war between the House of Arabian, which he served, and the great House of Zahar. So many people died in that war. Out of roughly 3,000 Arabian knights, more than 900 died, which is a third of them. Sadly everyone close to him was in that third. His friend Denver, who always said he'd open a laundry shop once the war ended. His teacher Hartman, who scolded him, saying he had much to learn. Also his beloved wife, and son, were all massacred by House Zahar, and he alone survived. That's why his mother was right to an extent. A knight's life can easily vanish, and is more meaningless than even a commoner's. But one thing she was wrong about was his aptitude. It's embarrassing to say this while he's in such a state, but he's a knight with fairly good skill, yet he easily destroyed that monster wraith that even he couldn't bring down. His potential is not merely that of a knight. At a minimum he is noble level, and among them at least upper tier aptitude. Turon says his mother told him his father was a knight, asking if that's a lie. Kaorn says on rare occasions a child worse than a knight is born among nobles, but also a noble class child is born among the knights. In that sense he thinks it would be better for him to leave this hill, and go out into the world. Turon asks why, and Kaorn says that because humans need more kind nobles and knights. As humans are still not the complete masters of this world. Long ago the other races that were pushed out by the gods are still watching for a chance to rise again, and in the middle of that the nobles only keep waging war against one another. That's why this is an age that desperately needs someone strong, and kind like himself. More than anything, surely he's not satisfied living as a shepherd. Turan looks over at him, and then asks what he could even gain by going down the mountain. Cowan says that depends on what he wants. Wealth, fame, authority, family, or friendship. Any of that is hard to obtain here. He tells him to try imagining it. He could wander like him, and destroy monsters that threaten people, or become an explorer who ventures into the unknown, or even be adopted into a house, and walk the path of power. Turan says listening to him he thinks he's right. It would be more interesting than herding sheep here. For the first time he's seriously curious about the outside world. Cowan says he worries he might be planning expectations for no reason. He'll support every possibility he has, and then asks what's his bloodline ability, as he should have asked this first. Turan asks what he means, and Cowan apologizes, saying that he keeps forgetting he doesn't know about magic. He explains that a bloodline ability is a trait nobles inherit from their ancestor, the Freyans. Whether or not you have a bloodline ability is also what separates nobles from knights. He asks if there was any spell that felt unusually easy and simple when he used magic, or some outstanding ability he has that doesn't need him to use magic. Turan asks if maybe it's that he's strong, but Cowan says just having mana makes a wizard's physical ability stronger. Turan says he has a good nose, and he's good at throwing stones. Cowan says that if your nose is exceptionally good it can be a bloodline ability. Being skilled with thrown weapons is one of House Arabian's traits, but it's a fairly common one though, and he tells him to keep talking until he figures it out. Cowan then says he sees, and Turan asks what he means. As he's starting to look a little down he says he thinks he knows which house his abilities are closest to. Turan asks which one, and Cowan says it's a great house known as Pursuers, or Hunters. It is House Sahar, the one that fought a war with House Arabian, that took his family. Turan looks surprised by this. He starts to feel conflicted because he's from the same bloodline as Cowan's enemies. He doesn't know what to say to him, and wonders if he should apologize, but these are the actions of relatives that he has never met, meaning they are practically strangers. Cowan calls out to him, telling him not to make such a worried expression. He didn't participate in the war himself. And it's an adult situation. If they try to wash blood with blood, the fighting will never end. Turan asks if he doesn't have any regrets, and Cowan asks about what. Turan says about telling him to go down the hill. Cowan says that if he goes down the mountain and pursues power, he'll inevitably end up joining the Zahar family, as he has outstanding abilities after all, but he trusts his character. Turan asks what he means, and Cowan says he's talking about the goodness in him, since he saved him, even while revealing an identity he's hidden his whole life. Rather, if someone like him joined the Zahar family, and rose to a high position within it, perhaps it could prevent such a terrible war from happening again. But either way, there's no need to think about it too seriously. After all, it's not like he's decided right now whether or not to join the family. Turan says that his thoughts are clear though, and he wants to try going down the mountain. Cowan says he's thought well, but Turan says he doesn't want to go right away. He'll head down only once Cowan's injury is healed. Cowan says that's kind, but he's just a bit scratched. Though, he's truly a good person. Later in the house, Cowan tells him that to use magic, he absolutely needs mana. That is why mana is commonly called the key to omnipotence. Turan asks about it, and Cowan says that it's not a truly omnipotent power as the name suggests, but to use magic, you need mana that matches it. Turan asks what the standard for mana that matches magic is. Cowan tells him he'll explain that right now. The difficulty of magic is largely determined by three factors. First is bloodline, second is affinity, and third is causality. The first one, bloodline, is determined by the bloodline you're born with. That applies to most nobles who are not knights. For example, it'd be difficult for him to heal his wounds with magic. And he asks if he's wrong. Turan says he isn't. Cowan explains that, but for the Revista bloodline from the south, it's something that they can do even without training. That's a power that comes from bloodline. Turan asks about affinity. Cowan says you can think of it as familiarity. It's the concept that a mage can more easily perform tasks that they are used to, or prefer. Turan says that's like how he made a fireball as if he was throwing a rock. Cowan says that's correct. Probably if he had simply made flames, he wouldn't have achieved that speed or firepower. The last one is the most important, which is causality. Even he doesn't fully understand it. He asks what would happen if he tried to kill him directly using mana. Turan says probably some light would shine from his head, and that would be it. Kaorn says that's exactly the phenomenon that occurs from a lack of causality. When there's no appropriate cause for a desired outcome, and when what needs to be achieved is excessively difficult, that's when this applies. Turan says that he thinks he understands what causality is a bit. If he wanted to kill him, rather than spending mana wishing for death, he would need to provide a cause of death, like creating and shooting flames. Kaorn struggled to make the water boil, but Turan did it with relative ease. He says it's because creating and shooting fire is more natural than directly lighting one. Kaorn says exactly. He could have become a scholar instead of a mage. Turan says that he can control ordinary animals as he wishes, so why is it that magical beasts need something like that? Kaorn tells him it's because of their mana. They continue talking, as one of the sheep is eavesdropping. Turan tells him that magic sure isn't easy. Kaorn says that an excellent mage knows not just how to use mana, but the principles and situations behind it as well. Turan says now that he thinks about it, he wants to know if the Zahar bloodline also has special magic. Kaorn tells him that they're skilled in stealth and tracking, and he should try it once. Turan says okay, and he says that he doesn't want to be seen by others, and he wishes neither sound nor smell could be detected. He starts to fade out, asking if it worked, and Kaorn stands there speechless, seeing nothing in front of him. He says that he succeeded because he can't see him anymore. He audibly gulps as he stares in front of him at the blank room. Turan slowly comes back to his sight, and Kaorn says it's been a while since he's seen it, but it's still a frightening ability. During the war, the Arabian Knights feared that ability most. Turan says this seems like an unfairly powerful ability, and Kaorn tells him that it's not invincible, and he'll teach him a few magic training methods. Turan says that he's being too friendly to an enemy family's mage, and Kaorn reminds him that he saved his life, and treated him, and he already told him that he trusts his character. Later, some ugly bald dude is asking if he's really selling the sheep, and leaving, because if he does, who's going to do the shepherding from now on? And he asks how he can decide something like that without consulting them. Turan says they should go figure out how to find a shepherd themselves, and it doesn't matter to them what he does with his belongings, but he hopes that they'll buy the sheep at a fair price, otherwise he's going to release them all, and leave. They're free to capture them, but they'll probably have a hard time doing it. Turns out the village chief is the ugly guy, and he says that this bastard is someone who keeps his word, and there's nothing that will come from irritating him. He says he understands, and gives him a bag of money, telling him to do whatever he wants. Turan says that now that he thinks about it, those villagers still owe Kaorn compensation after everything, and he debates going to collect it. Kaorn says that he doesn't intend on receiving it, as it was him who caught the magic beast after all. Turan says that's true, but now they've come to a crossroads where they have to split ways. Kaorn tells him that he's sorry for refusing his offer to travel together, as he's more comfortable alone. Turan says not at all, and he understands, but then thanks him for everything. Kaorn tells him to take care, and Turan says that he hopes that they can meet again with smiling faces. Turan watched Kaorn's figure for a long time. Only later did he realize why he didn't want the old knight to speak to him formally. Although he never lacked affection from his mother, he had secretly been yearning for a father figure, and someone that he could see as a role model for what kind of man he should become. His journey continues as he goes deep into the desert, and makes his way past a canyon, until what he spots off in the distance are people. He asks if maybe they're traveling merchants that go from village to village, but this is good, as he can ask them for directions. A man asks who he is to block their path, and he says that he's traveling alone, wanting to know where the nearest city is. They tell him that if he follows the road they came from, he'll reach a city called Muriai. Turan thanks them for telling him, but one of them says to wait, asking if he's really going to leave after getting information. Turan asks what he's talking about, wondering what he wants him to do. The dude says if he receives something, he could give something else in return. They start to draw their blades, and tell him to take off his bag. Turan asks if they're bandits, and the dude asks what he's going to do if they are. The older man who told him where the city is says this is just recklessness, as this is a wasteland where no one would find it strange if someone died. He should take off his bag, and cloak while they're being nice, as killing him, and stripping him down would be bloody, and take a lot of work. Turan says he understands. And since they're bandits who kill people, he starts to reflect back on his lesson of causality with Kaorn, and says that he's going to use them as practice. They start to laugh at him, saying that he's talking like he's some kind of wizard. Turan swipes his hand forward, sending them flying through the air with wind. He says instead of just gathering wind out of thin air, shaping it with his hand, and amplifying it uses far less mana. He didn't know if he could whip up wind this strong with so little mana. The dudes are just confused. He then starts to raise water from his water skin, and forms it into a crystal. But he's made multiple now, and the bandits realize they fucked up as one dude just gets impaled with all of the spikes, killing him instantly. Turon says this is supposed to be a spell that's useful when there's a lot of water, but currently just throwing stones feels faster, and stronger than this so far. The bandits apologize saying they didn't know he was a wizard, begging for forgiveness, but he's distracting him while the rest creep up on him from behind. Turon raises his foot before stomping down as sand pillars spawn in under the dudes, impaling all of them. The leader stands there, speechless, staring at the corpses of all of his men, and says that's impossible. Turon says he has one question, and the dude says he'll answer anything. Turon asks why they attacked him without a plan. If he's a traveler walking alone he could be a wizard, which is what just happened. They say it's because he bowed his head. Even when they spoke rudely he bowed, and greeted them, so they assumed he was an ordinary person. Turon thanks him, saying that he taught him something useful. The dude smiles, asking if he's really going to spare him. We see water forming above the guy's head. As we get a flashback to Karen telling him that from now on he's going to meet a lot of people, and there's something he wants him to absolutely know. Never show mercy to scum like bandits, as they are people who don't hesitate to harm others for profit. The only reason he's saying this so firmly is because he understands how he is. Turon tells him that he gets the reasoning because the life he spares out of pity can end up harming 10 good people as he kills the guy he says he stalled long enough. The road the merchants turned bandits dragged their cart along left a very clear path for him to follow along the sand. But as he followed their trail, one thing stuck into his mind, that was that he actually killed people. He felt guilt, but he couldn't just let them go because Karen's warning came back to remind him, people who could decide without hesitation to rob and kill for profit would target others again at any time. Like wool tracks in the desert slowly fading as weeds grow over them, his chaotic heart gradually settled as he recalled Karen's teachings, and then he arrived in a new world. He stands above a small city, something unlike the village he's been cooped up in for his life so far, and says that it's pretty. The streets are crowded with people, and he says it's his first time seeing so many of them. Even the architecture is completely different from what he's used to, and it feels like he's truly come to a new place. He walks over to one of the merchants, and they welcome him, asking what he can get. He says he's not a customer, and he recalls Karen saying if he reaches the city and needs a place to rest, look for an inn. No matter the village or city, there's usually one. The dude tells him that if he's not buying any fruit to get lost, and Turon wonders why he's being rude, and if it's some unspoken rule in cities that you have to buy fruit before you ask questions, and he asks how much the apple is. The man tells him that it's 2 dupit, and Turon asks what that is. The merchant says he's an outsider, so he probably doesn't know what it is, but paying with other coins is fine too. He hands the man some coins, asking where the inn is, and the man tells him that it's the biggest inn in the city, and when he gets there a woman named Lena welcomes him. She tells him that he's handsome, and he asks how much for a night. She tells him it's 16 dupit, and he says that he'll stay. More importantly, he has a question. He asks if there's a monster nearby with a bounty on it. She's surprised that he's looking for one, but it's because he needs to absorb their mana, and Karen says that hunting monsters would earn money too. He asks why she's not answering, and she says that there's no such thing as free in this world. She eventually gets him to buy a drink, and tells him to go to the city hall. He asks what that is, and she asks if he really doesn't know, saying he must be from the countryside. City halls are where they handle various public affairs, and the officials who work there are employed by the city's lord. Since the sun has already gone down, it's probably closed, but if he wants to find a monster bounty he should go there tomorrow. And she asks if he's a monster hunter. He asks what that is, and she says that people say that if an ordinary person hunts monsters they become a wizard, and that he must be trying to become one too. She says that if anyone who believes that kind of superstition is an idiot, and he asks what she means until another monster hunter named Midden walks up behind him, saying that it's a real fact that you can become a wizard by killing monsters, as he saw it with his own eyes. Lena is surprised to see him, and he says that he's not dying until he becomes a wizard. Turon pats his hand until he removes it, and the dude apologizes, but Turon says that he wants to hear more about what he was talking about. Midden asks if he's talking about the part where he said that people can become wizards by killing monsters, and he says that wizards get stronger when they hunt monsters by the same principle. If an ordinary person kills one they can become a wizard. The 4 of them are hunting monsters to try to become wizards at the moment. Turon asks if that means that someone among them is already a wizard, and they say no. There's only the Lord's wizard, and the 3 under him, but on the topic of hunting monsters, he finds it surprising because his gear is shabby, and he doesn't even have a weapon. Turon says he does as he holds up a sling. They say judging by how worn it is he must have used it a lot, and Turan says it's good for firing something about the size of an egg quickly. Midden tells him that that's only good for hunting rabbits or fox monsters, but they're just saying they wish they had one more shooter, wondering if he has any interest in hunting with them. He smiles, and says no, and thanks them because there's no reason he has to hunt together with them, but today was chaotic. He still can't believe he actually left the village, and he doesn't know what's going to happen from here on out. He senses someone outside the door, asking who it is, and he recalls Kaorn telling him that even at the inn he shouldn't let his guard down as a city isn't automatically safe, and he should never let his guard down ever. He opens the door while imbuing his hand with mana just in case, and he cracks it open surprised, asking Lena what she's doing here. She asked if he was asleep as she thought the room might be cold, so she came to keep him warm. He's confused, asking what she means, and she reaches for her chest. She tells him exactly what it sounds like. He's just confused, asking what she's talking about. She says for a small amount of money she'll do whatever he wants. He asks what she'll do if there's nothing he wants, and she tells him not to lie. She can tell just by looking at his face. Then Bro turns into the Buddha himself. It freaks her out a bit. He recalls Kaorn getting mad, saying that he can never fall for the honeypot. He always has to be careful with women at inns, and prostitutes in general. Most of them carry STDs, and while they have strong disease resistance, so it's no problem for them. But if he's careless, he could pass it on when he's with another woman. He shouldn't let desire trap him into doing something he'll regret. Turan says that so far cities aren't easy to live in either. The fruit shop earlier, now Lena too. To think they put a price on even small bits of info and conversation. Cities really are pretty cold-hearted. He then hears Midden and his men discussing something. They ask Midden why he was trying to bring that guy from earlier along. He didn't look like he'd be much help. And the other dude says that's right. And that he just sounds so cocky that he'd be perfect to use as bait. But Midden says it's because he reminds him of himself when he was young. If he's at least next to him, he figured he might as well survive a little longer. They say that he's way too good-hearted. And Turan smiles, saying it looks like maybe the city's not completely cold after all. Sometime later he heads to City Hall, and a man asks if he can help him. Turan asks if he's an official, and he says of course, asking what else he looks like. Turan tells him he came to hunt monsters, and the dude's confused. He recalls Kaorn telling him previously that the world would not be kind to him. If he thinks about it the other way around. There's no reason it has to be kind. If he wants people to treat him kindly, the method is simple. He needs to reveal that he's a wizard, and ordinary people will bow their heads. The official hands him a paper saying that he can't take it with him, so he needs to look, and hand it back. Turan asks if it's a crow monster, and the dude jokingly asks if it looks like a cat or something. And it's unlikely, but if he kills a monster he has to bring it to the city because it needs a wizard to disperse the mana so it doesn't become a wraith. If he kills a monster, and leaves it abandoned under city law, the penalty is execution. Turan says he knows this, and he knows what happens when a monster becomes a wraith, and he can't repeat the same mistake. Turan then asks if knights don't hunt monsters, and the official says that they're not people with time to spare. As a knight's job is to maintain public order in the city, and hunting monsters outside the city is something for thugs like him to handle. Turan leaves, and the official says that another corpse is going to pile up outside the city. But later we see the monster dead as it has a giant hole in its chest. And everybody's surprised, saying this can't be. And they ask him how he brought it back so fast. This thing is so damn small, I thought it was a giant. They ask if he killed it alone, and he said that he did. Asking if he can receive the reward for killing it. The official says that they'll give it to him, and hands him a bag telling him to go get some rest. They talk about how incredible it is because even its wings are still intact. And if it's possible to bring back a blade crow in this condition. The official thinks about it, and looks over asking Turan why he's still here. Turan asks if there's any other monsters worth hunting. And they ask if he's really planning to go hunt more. Later in the inn, Lena's telling him that these are the most expensive items on their menu. And she never dreamed that someone like him could defeat 30 monsters in just 3 days. Guess there's been a bit of a time skip. She says he must have made a lot of money. And he says that money isn't his only goal. More precisely, the goal is the monster's mana. Thanks to that he's definitely gotten stronger. And compared to when he met Kaorn, his mana has increased several fold. So he can feel a limit. With only weak monsters' mana it's going to be hard to get any stronger. He then tells Lena he has a question. She asks what it is. And he asks if she took a bite of this. She reminds him that he ate it all by himself. But even though he's skinny he can definitely eat. The chef says he made it for the first time in a while, so he's happy he enjoyed it. Turan says it was delicious. And as he goes to leave, one of Midden's men grabs him by the coat. asking if he's really eating something so tasty by himself. And they make fun of him, saying they've heard that he's made a lot of money, and that he should give some charity to his partners. Turan hits him in the face, and the dude stumbles backwards. Turan says that he thought he wanted some charity. And the dude gets pissed, and swings at him. Turan dodges, and backhands him, sending him falling backwards. The next one runs in carrying a chair, and swings, but Turan blocks it, before raising his hand, and flicks him in the forehead. Lena gets pissed, and yells telling them to stop fighting in the end. Later Midden apologizes saying he gave them a proper scolding, as this will never happen again. And they've been tight on money lately. And they just got jealous when they saw him. And he tells the other two dipshits to apologize. Turan asks if things are that hard. And he says they've just been limited. In 3 days he doesn't think they'll be able to pay the room fee. But that's their problem. Turan then hands him a bag of money telling him to take it. Midden asks why. And Turan says this is repayment for the kindness he showed before when he said that he was worried, and tried to bring him along. Midden asks how he knew about that. And Turan says there's no such thing as free. And he needs to give him some info in return. Midden laughs saying that info is what he's best at. And he had to tell him everything he knows. Later outside the town, Turan looks at it saying this might be his last hunt in the city. Midden gave him info about the next one. So it's about time he left for there. There was a lot more useful info than he expected. And Midden is a great person. He doesn't feel as seasoned as Kaorn. But that just makes him purer, and kinder. He then senses something, and recognizes the smell, saying he hopes his hunch is wrong. As he heads into the woods, he sees marks on a tree, and looks over spotting one of the dipshits he fought in the bar. Cut across the chest bleeding out. My bad bro's already dead. But he knows that he's from Midden's group. He then looks over, and spots Midden's corpse, and the coins on the ground. And Turan just wonders what happened to him. One of the dudes is still alive though, and tries speaking until he gets the word rabbit out. Turan asks about it, and we see the rabbit with blood on its mouth still eating one of the men. And Turan spots it too. It stares at him with its evil little demonic eyes. And Turan stands up before it leaps at him. He dodges, but it breaks the tree behind him, and he says that shit is fast. He actually almost got hit by it. He twirls his sling, and raises it into the air before firing it out as it soars through the air. We see there's actually multiple rocks as all three fly in towards the rabbit. It's fast enough to deflect, and block them. He says that this one's used to defending against thrown weapon techniques. It readies itself before dashing for him once more. And it's surprised to see him completely vanish in front of it. It comes to a standstill, and Turan appears behind it with a dagger in hand. He stabs it directly in the throat causing it to scream, and then he jumps backward to distance himself before going invisible yet again. It leaps directly where he was standing, coming into contact with the tree, splitting it in half. It continues wildly swinging, trying to do everything it can to find him. The forest begins falling over one tree after the other until the rabbit gets frustrated, and screams into the air. It begins bleeding out before falling over onto the floor. Bro got rage-baited to death. Turan then undoes his invisibility, approaching the monster, and starts to stretch his hand out towards it before absorbing its mana. He says that the amount he's getting now is different. It's more than that leopard monster he encountered the first time. One of the men who's barely still alive says he can't believe this, and the fact that he's a wizard is crazy. Turan says he is, and the man asks why he's hiding his identity. Turan asks if the four of them have anything that he can pass on to their family. The guy begins crying saying that he doesn't, and he looks at Midden full of regret. We get a flashback to Midden telling Turan that there's a great city nearby called Orem, and it has a place called a library. Turan asks what that is, and he tells him that it has thousands of books. Then tells Turan at the moment he said books, he looked fully interested. Turan asks if he does, and Midden says that he heard not just anyone gets into the library. Turan asks how he's meant to get in then, and he tells him that apparently only wizards are allowed in. Turan says he sees, and he tells him that he's decided. Midden asks about what, and Turan says he's going to go to that great city he mentioned. Later we see him after having buried them. He says he's happy there, and walks away. Some time later we see him standing in line. He says he's almost embarrassed that he was shocked by the small city of Muriai as he's now standing before Orem. He can tell how big of a city this is based on scale alone. He didn't think that there'd be this many people trying to enter the city either. He wonders if they're scanning for wanted criminals. But he says as expected it's got a more established system. They tell him to stop, and Turan asks what's wrong. They tell him that he can't be allowed to enter because his clothes are absolutely filthy, and he should wash himself off at least. Later he gets into the city, and stands before a tower saying that this must be the library that Midden talked about. It's overwhelming, and it must have been built with magic. He walks up to the entrance saying that he's trying to enter, and they say only wizards can enter. He tells them that he is a wizard though, and one of the guards gets pissed asking if he wants to die for impersonating one. As there's no way a kid like him could be a wizard. He starts to imbue his hand with mana, and he recalls Kaorn telling him wizards can recognize each other by sensing the other's mana, and they can tell whether someone is stronger than them or not. Turon decides to use this to his advantage, and releases a shit ton of mana to the point that the dude starts to get scared from sensing it, and falls onto the floor. He realizes that he's no ordinary wizard, and he's at least noble class or higher. He screams his name saying he is Kenya, a knight of House Valtes, wondering which house he is from. Turon asks if he has to tell him to enter, and the dude says no. To use the library he needs permission from the master of Valtes. Turon asks what that means, and the dude says he'll contact the house for him. Later we see Turon sighing as he thought it would be a simple process, but maids are now cleaning him inside of a bathhouse, and he wonders how this even happened. He tells them to stop it, wondering if there's a problem with him washing himself. They say that if they fail to properly attend to an esteemed guest they'll be punished. He tells them to do what they want. And later one of the maids says it's amazing. She instantly realizes what she said, and covers her mouth. He asks if there's something on his face. The maid says she just lost herself because of how handsome he is, and begs for forgiveness. He says there's nothing to forgive. They tell him to stop speaking so casually to them. Then someone else enters asking what's going on. We see a girl saying that she can't believe he's the same guest who showed up looking like a beggar. After washing up, and dressing he looks like a prince. The man with her says she shouldn't be saying that, and he introduces himself. She does as well as her name is Azella. She asks what house he belongs to, and he says for personal reasons it's difficult to say. She tells him that's a shame. She decides to play a prank on him for hiding who he is. She begins to release her mana as it spreads throughout the room. She says that he needs to show her what exactly his mana looks like. If you've watched till the end, comment, Lindor, to let me know. Huge shout out, and a special thanks to my Patreon and channel members. Subscribe for more videos like this, leave a like or a comment to help the channel out. Thanks for watching.